What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, the Detroit Lions did not have the greatest 2020 season. You can look at the 5-11 record. You can look at the numerous records that we set for the wrong reasons. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can look at this season, and many of them are negative outlooks. Many of them are not positive. Many of them, you'd look back on the season and say, this season was a disappointment from just about every standpoint. However, I'm a person, as many of you probably know by now, I am somebody that likes to look at this team particularly from a positive standpoint. I'm always looking for positive takeaways. I'm always looking for positivity. I'm always looking for the good over the bad. And as far as looking at this season and trying to find some good in this team, there were quite a few players this season that had breakout seasons, that were surprise players, players that maybe we didn't expect to be as good as they are, but did. Players that maybe outperformed their contract, outperformed their draft stock, or finally just had that big breakout season to finally say, I arrived, and make that statement of, I arrived in the NFL. And today we're going to be going over those players. I had 5 players in mind, had 5 players that I could find that I thought had very good seasons, had breakout seasons, players that just over-exceeded expectations, as I said, either from a draft perspective, either from a contract perspective, or just players that, found their groove and were finally able to have that breakout, that top-tier season that we might have been waiting on for a couple of years. Now, before we get into finding these 5 players and before we get into talking about these 5 players, if you are new to the channel and are enjoying this Detroit Lions content, please consider liking the videos and subscribing to the channel. It takes only 2 seconds out of your day to do so. It helps the channel out more than you can know, and I'd be greatly appreciative for it. It'd help everybody involved. It's free, it's easy, it's simple. It takes 2 whole seconds out of your 24-hour day. I'd be appreciative for it, but without any further ado, and with all of that being said, let's get into the breakout players of the 2020 season for our Detroit Lions. Now, I don't think you can start this list of breakout players without mentioning our true breakout player of the season in Taylor Decker. I believe Taylor Decker took the biggest step from last year to this year this season. Taylor Decker, throughout his career, has never been a bad offensive tackle for the Lions. He's never been a bad left tackle for Matt Stafford. He's always done a very decent job at protecting Stafford. He's always been a pretty good tackle, always pretty much, to me at least, lived up to at least a first-round pick, at least the 16th overall pick. To me, he has lived up to that throughout the first 4 years of his NFL career. In his first 4 years as an NFL starter, he averaged giving up about 4.5 sacks a season while having around 7.5 penalties a season, which, in a 16-game season is not a horrible thing to go for. In a 16-game season, if you give up about 1 sack a game, which is 1 sack every quarter of the season, 1 sack a month, that's not a bad offensive tackle by any means. That is by no means a bad tackle. 7 penalties, that's just over or just under 1 per game. Again, you'd like to see a little bit of improvement there, but overall in his first 4 years, Taylor Decker was a solid tackle. He was not elite. I wouldn't even say he was great, but I think he was above average. He was good. He allowed about 1 sack a month, 1 sack every 4 to 5 games. Like, he was really, really solid and was very worthy of the first round selection we gave him. However, in the 2020 season, and actually prior to the 2020 season, Taylor Decker got a massive contract extension. He got a very large deal, making him one of the top paid tackles in the NFL, and many Lions fans were skeptical when it happened. I, was a little on the fence. I needed to see more from Taylor Decker, but I was hearing good things about him in training camp. I was hearing very good things about his progression. I was hearing very good things about his play type in training camp this season. So I was optimistic, but I was still questioning the move. I was obviously still questioning the contract because, as I said, he's been a very solid tackler. He was a very solid tackle for the first 4 years, but to me, he was never a top 5 tackle. To me, he was never an elite tackle that needs to be paid elite money, and that's exactly what he got in the 2020 offseason. However, with that being said, and with the skepticism surrounding him, Taylor Decker stepped up to the plate and played absolutely phenomenally this season. Taylor Decker took his game to a whole different level this season, and I don't know what the difference was. I don't know what the improvement was. I don't know what the reason was for the drastic increase in production and the massive boost to his play. However, in the 2020 NFL season, Taylor Decker played in 1,048 snaps. He played on every single offensive snap snap for the Detroit Lions, which is good to see. He didn't miss time. He was healthy. He was good. He was on the field. He was playing every single snap for the Detroit Lions offensive line, which was great to see. That was the second most snaps he's ever played in his career. I believe his rookie season, or there was one other season that he played more snaps by a couple. However, this was the second most snaps he's ever played in his career. However, in this season, he only allowed 6 penalties, which is lower than average for him, which is far lower than it has been, which is better than a lot of other seasons that he's been in. I believe it's a career low, excluding the season that he tore his labrum and he tore something in his shoulder that really limited him for the time he did play. Excluding that season because he played in very limited snaps and wasn't on the field for a lot of the time, that is a career low in penalties. And then he only allowed 2 sacks on the season, which is by far a career low. Obviously, again, excluding the season that he only played in a couple of games. Both of those are career lows. While playing the second most snaps of his career, he had the highest PFF grade he had his highest Pro Football Focus grade of his career, which doesn't mean a whole lot to me, but for people that like Pro Football Focus grades, that's something to look at. I believe he got an 82.2 grade overall on the season. So Taylor Decker played a phenomenal season. He played very, very well this year, and those stats alone are very good, right? If you play in 1,048 snaps and you only give up 2 sacks and 6 penalties on the season, that is a very, very good season for an offensive tackle. That's 1 sack allowed every 8 games for Matthew Stafford. And we know Matt Stafford takes a lot of hits, and we know he's taken a lot of hits over his career. However, Taylor Decker was not the reason for that, especially this season. And I mean, those numbers are impressive by themselves, but if you look at who he played against, if you look at who was rushing off the edge against him, it looks even more impressive. Now, you look within the division, right? We played the Bears twice. We played the Green Bay Packers twice. That means Taylor Decker went up against Khalil Mack, Robert Quinn, and the Smith brothers all twice. The Minnesota Vikings didn't really have any great pass rusher this season. Danielle Hunter was hurt. Everson Griffin was gone. They had Yannick Ngakoue for a little bit, but they traded him. So the Vikings didn't have anybody spectacular. I don't believe he gave up a sack versus the Vikings, which is good to see. But then you move outside the division. You move to the guys that, are outside the division that we still played. You got him. He shut down Chandler Jones. He shut down Cam Jordan of the Saints. He shut down Josh Allen of the Jacksonville Jaguars. He shut down, for the most part, Justin Houston of the Indianapolis Colts. He shut down Chase Young and Brian Burns and J.J. Watt and Shaq Barrett. These are all elite pass rushers. These are all guys that are going to get you double-digit sacks. These are all guys that are going to be pushing for 10, 15, maybe even that 20 sack mark. He played all of them, and still, with all of that being said, with all the Pro Bowlers, all the All-Pros that he played against this season, he allowed 2 sacks. 2 whole sacks against all of those pass rushers. That is an amazing season, and by far, I think Taylor Decker was the most improved player this year, and by every sense of the word and every sense of the term, he was the breakout player for the Detroit Lions this season. However, not only looking at Taylor Decker, because he was not the only player to break out this season, the other player and one of the other players that was able to have a really good season and exceed all expectations was Romeo Akwara, by far our most efficient and by far our most productive pass rusher on the season. Now, Romeo Akwara going into 2020 had one season over a sack and a half, and that was in 2018. He had 7.5 sacks. It was a good season. He was a good pass rusher for us, but wasn't really elite, wasn't going to get that 10 sack season, or so we thought. Again, going into the other seasons, he had 1 sack, he had 0 sacks, and he had a sack and a half last season, or he had a sack and a half in 2019. So going into 2020, he was a big question mark. Going into 2020, some people didn't even think he was going to make the team. Some people did not have very high expectations for him, and he came out with a lot of injuries surrounding him, right? His pass rushing partner in Trey Flowers went down. He didn't really have Everson Griffin for a lot of the time that he was in Detroit, and he was really the only he was really the only consistent pass rusher that we had on the team, and Romeo Akwara went out pretty much single-handedly, and not only did he get 10 sacks, but on the season he had 44 tackles, 10 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, 18 quarterback hits, 3 forced fumbles, 1 safety, 29 pressures, and 11 hurries. He had the most sacks by far. I believe the second most sacks on the team went to Everson Griffin with 3.5. So that's a 6.5 sack difference between Romeo Akwara and the second best pass rusher on the team. Romeo Akwara had a fantastic year. He balled out. I mean, he really took everything into his own hands. He wasn't going to rely on anybody else to get the sacks. He wasn't just going to add pressure. He wasn't just going to put pressure on the quarterback and hurry the quarterback like he did last year. He was going to finish the job this season, and he did that. I mean, double-digit sack season for the first time in his career. We needed it because without those 10 sacks, the Lions on the season have 14. The Lions on the season this year only had 24 sacks, and Romeo Akwara contributed to 10 of them. 3 of them came in the final game, not for Romeo, for the team. 3 of those 24 sacks came in the final game. So if you take out the 3 sacks in the first half versus the Minnesota Vikings, which, they were good sacks for sure, but a majority of our production either came in the final game of the season where the Vikings were trying to tank just as hard as the Lions, or 10 of those coming from Romeo Akwara being by far our best pass rusher on the season. He had a breakout season. I was expecting good things from Romeo. I was not expecting double-digit sacks. And the funniest part is he could have had more. He missed a sack on Kyler Murray. There were several sacks that he missed. Realistically, I think he could have had 15 sacks this season. And I think the biggest thing that showed up to me with Romeo is he showed up in the big moments. When you needed a big play to be made, Romeo Akwara was the guy to get the sack. He was the guy to get the strip. He stripped Matt Ryan in Atlanta. That got the Lions the ball back. That got them that field goal that tied the game and sent it into overtime. You look at the Chicago Bears game. He got that timely strip sack on Mitch Trubisky, which eventually led to an Adrian Peterson rushing touchdown that would seal the football game. You look at some other times. His other strip sack, one was against Tampa Bay. That one didn't really count. But you look at the big plays he made, and not only did he get double-digit sacks and 3 forced fumbles along with a fumble recovery, he showed up in the big moments as well. He showed up. He was clutch. Not only was he consistent and productive, he was consistently clutch. When you needed a play to be made on the defensive side of the ball, Romeo Akwara continuously made that play over and over and over again. And that's, a really good thing to see out of a player that isn't being paid a lot, that was on the final year of his contract. It was a breakout season for him. That was kind of the guy I was talking about along with Taylor Decker. Those were the 2 guys that have been productive before and haven't been bad players for the Lions, but both of those players stepped up tremendously this season when we needed both of them to do so, and both of them had true breakout seasons. Both of them had phenomenal seasons that exceeded every expectation set upon them. We're able to bring both back. Obviously, Taylor Decker will be here for a long time, but if we can bring back Romeo Akwara, I think he can be a very good pass rusher for us for a very long time. I think he's finally starting to figure things out in the NFL. He has more than 90. He has 99% of his production with the Detroit Lions. He had 7.5 sacks his first year, 10 sacks this previous season, the 2020 season. It was a down year in 2019. However, his playing time was severely cut, which I think was a big part of that. But he's been very productive with the Detroit Lions, and I think we should bring him back. He has 17.5 sacks in 2 seasons, 2 real starting seasons, 2 seasons where he's had significant playing time. He has 17.5 sacks with the Detroit Lions in those 2 seasons alone. Romeo Akwara has been a very good player for this Lions team, and this year he kicked it up another notch and made his case for a new contract, and I'm really hoping to see the Lions bring him back for next season and for many seasons to come. Now moving on to our third breakout player, moving on to the third player that really really exceeded expectations, a player that was really able to, go above and beyond what was asked of him this season, was rookie guard and rookie 3rd round pick Jonah Jackson. Now, Jonah Jackson was a guy that when he was drafted, Lions fans were excited about. When he was drafted, a lot of Lions fans thought he was going to be the starter and he was going to be very, very solid. And that was exactly the case. He was a starter week 1. He was a very solid player. He was very good for the Detroit Lions. On the season, Jonah Jackson played in 1,006 snaps for the Lions. He had 5 penalties and 4 sacks. So, he had less penalties than Taylor Decker, who I already mentioned had a phenomenal season. He gave up a couple more sacks, but again, as a rookie, giving up 4 sacks in over 1,000 snaps is not bad. Giving up 4 sacks in a 16-game season is not bad. As a rookie, playing against some really good pass rushers, even on the interior, like I mentioned, Taylor Decker faced a lot of good edge rushers. Jonah Jackson faced a lot of good interior rushers, and he, for the most part, stepped up to the plate over and over and over again. Of course, he had his rookie mistakes. Of course, he made his mistakes, as young players are prone to do, as young players are going to do over and over and over over again. They make them yearly. That's why they're called rookie mistakes. But Jonah Jackson continuously stepped up to the plate when he was needed. He moved positions. He moved from the right guard to the left guard. And even then, he continued to play well. I mean, he played with the tenacity. He played with some aggression. He played very, very well for a rookie guard. And by far, he was the best rookie guard from this class. If you look at the other two guards that were drafted in front of him, Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis, he played more snaps than them, had fewer penalties than them, and only allowed one more sack than they did in far more playing time. So, I mean, Jonah Jackson was by far the best guard out of this class. He's going to be an anchor of this offensive line for a long, long time. He was probably one of the steals of the draft because he's a starter. He's a quality starter. He's going to be a centerpiece of this line for a long time. And although he might not be the flashiest guy, although he might not be the best player from the draft class, he is a guy that very much exceeded his draft selection. He very much exceeded middle of the third round talent. He was so much better than that. I mean, I'm not going to say he was a first round talent, but if we were to take Jonah Jackson in the second round, and if we were able to get the same production out of it, I would be happy with that selection. And the fact that we got him with our second pick in the third round makes it all the more sweeter. He very much exceeded his draft stock. He very much exceeded his draft selection, and I am glad that he is on the Detroit Lions because he is going to be a very good player for a very long time to come. Fourth player on the list, kind of a quick one, Jack Fox, the punter, the Pro Bowler, the guy that all of a sudden showed up at the organization, showed up at the training facilities, and just started bombing kicks, started bombing punts, and obviously became the NFC punter for the Pro Bowl. Jack Fox on the season had 59 punts, which ranked 13th in the NFL. So it's not even like he was punting the most in the NFL. However, he did average 49.1 yards per punt, which ranked third in the NFL, and he had a long of 67, ranking 6th in the NFL. And of those 59 punts that he had, 26 of them were down inside the 20. That's 44% of his punts were down inside the 20-yard line. Some of them were down at the 1, some of them were down within the 5. A lot of them were down far past the 20-yard line, but 26 of his 59 punts were dropped and were stopped right in the 20-yard line, which is great at flipping field position. He was obviously a Pro Bowl punter for a reason. Jack Fox came in his first year as a pro, his first year getting quality playing time, his first year being given a true opportunity, and he made the most of it. One season in the NFL, one Pro Bowl under his belt, best punter in the NFL right now. He was a surprise player, and he far outseeded every expectation I had for him this season. And then moving on to the final player that we will talk about today, it's of course TJ Hockenson, the Pro Bowl tight end, the guy that's coming off an injury-riddled season, a guy that a lot of Lions fans wish we didn't take before the season began, and a guy that even today, after making the Pro Bowl, after putting up these really, really good numbers for the Detroit Lions, while not being utilized enough correctly all the time, a guy that Detroit Lions fans are still saying might not have been the best pick. TJ Hockenson was the best pick. TJ Hockenson on the season had 67 receptions, 723 receiving yards, and 6 receiving touchdowns. He was the first and the highest voted Pro Bowl tight end out of everybody to go to the Pro Bowl. He was third amongst tight ends in receiving yards. He had a lot of touchdowns. He has his first full season under his belt. Obviously, this was his second season as a pro. As I said, very injury-riddled his rookie season. He came back, he went into the offseason, got bigger, faster, stronger, smarter, came back into the NFL season, came back for his sophomore campaign. He and Matt Stafford hooked up numerous times for a lot of touchdowns, a lot of yards, a lot of security blankets, a lot of third down conversions, a lot of, just production from that tight end position. And I mean, there's a reason he was the most voted on tight end for the Pro Bowl. There's a reason that he was third amongst tight ends in receiving yards while being underutilized. There's a reason that he is the best tight end in the NFC this year. It's because he had a breakout season. He was a good player for the Lions. He was probably one of our best weapons. I would say Marvin Jones was a little bit better from a stats perspective, but as a tight end, getting 700 plus yards and 6 touchdowns is very, very good. That's the second most receiving yards a Detroit Lions tight end has ever had in a single season. And even with saying that, even with that stat being the case, he could have had many more yards. He could have been utilized so many more times. He could have gotten involved so much more in this offense, and I would expect to see that even more next year. And he had a breakout season next year, and I think he's going to continue to trend upwards and onwards. I think he's just going to continue to get better over and over and over. Every single season we're going to look at it and say he's improving, he's getting better, and when Travis Kelce retires, you can make a really, really strong case convinced by that time that TJ Hockenson will be the best tight end in the NFL, not just in the North, not just in the NFC, but in the entire NFL. When in a couple of seasons, especially once Travis Kelce retires, you could make a very strong case that TJ Hockenson will be the best tight end in football. And if you get the best player at a given position, that can never be a bad draft pick. So with all that being said, though, those are my 5 breakout players of the 2020 season. Those are guys that, as I said in the beginning, either, exceeded their contract, exceeded their draft selection, or finally just had that big breakout season that we were waiting on them to have. So with all that being said, though, that is all I got for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Have an absolutely fantastic rest of your day. If you are new to the channel, as I said in the beginning, please consider liking the videos and subscribing to the channel. It takes only 2 seconds out of your day to do so, and it helps the channel out more than you could know. I'd be greatly appreciative for it, but with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you all tomorrow with more Lions content. Thank you so much for watching. Bye, guys.